Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to a cold Guangdong this morning.
It's all right. Good to have you again.
Good to be back, thank you.
So, last time we had a hiccup again. So,
It's very
yes.
rare that it happened to me. We've got a lot of construction going on. My entire building, which is inside of a compound of about 30 buildings, the entire compound is being renovated. It's all 50 or 60 years old, and they first of all they put a new facade on every building, so they scaffolded us up. It's been going on for about 6 months, and it's just coming to the last days. They have now relaid a new concrete, and they're embossing that concrete with like Republican era stones. So it looks nice. It's really starting to look very, very good. But they were just finishing off something, and an excavator went through one of the wires it shouldn't have gone through, and bang, everything. Our power remained on, our phone line remained on, but our Wi-Fi all went off for the whole compound. And it took 26 hours to get fixed, which is
Yeah,
quite unusual for China. They usually work faster.
seems like they don't have underground utility net plans, I guess. Because normally you would have looked at those. Over here, we call them "look before you dig" or something like that.
Yeah.
Pipeline utilities, so you
I'm
don't
sure
cut
they
through
do.
them. Yeah.
I'm sure they do, but I'm sure even when you have proper plans, things go wrong. Something's in the wrong place, or an excavator driver had a bad night the night before. I don't know what happened. Anyway, surprisingly, we kept all of our power and stuff like that. It was just even 4G went out, but 5G stayed on. So my wife's phone is 4G,
Okay.
mine was 5G, so I was able to operate. She couldn't. Her phone doesn't have 5G, so time to upgrade the phone. So they're obviously on different systems as well.
Okay. So how was your New Year's Eve and day?
New Year's Eve, we did very little. A couple of friends came round, and one left early, which is quite common for us. We don't do very much on New Year's Eve. And New Year's Day, we went out to my mother and father-in-law's home. And my father-in-law is a little bit traditional. For him, New Year's is this is not New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. But he said, since it's a holiday, let's have dinner on the holiday, and not realizing that New Year's Eve is our holiday. New Year's Day is a recovery day from it. But he insisted that we had our New Year's Eve dinner or New Year dinner on New Year's Day. So that's perhaps the Chinese way of celebrating New Year's Day instead of New Year's Eve. But we've got in about a month, just over a month, we've got Chinese New Year coming, and that's much more important. They do really celebrate that. Christmas and New Year here is pretty quiet, except we have foreign friends who come around, or we go to their place. This year they came to ours, and we had, I think, 17 people for dinner. And I actually cooked a turkey on the barbecue. It worked all right. Nice,
That's good.
tender, succulent, juicy turkey.
They
And I
have
made a Christmas pudding.
Yeah, they have Chinese New Year's celebrations over here as well.
Yeah.
Crown Casino, I guess, over there.
Or they would, because most of their customers are from here, so they'd be doing something big, I think.
Yeah, something, a small celebration, but yeah, it happens. But it's very, very good. I mean, it's very clean. The area is very clean, so you don't really feel crowded, I guess, for people.
No, you can go down to Chinatown. I've been to Chinatown at Chinese New Year. It's pretty crowded.
It's really small over here, Chinatown. It's like just one street, like 2 blocks. It's really small.
Sydney's a bit bigger. Sydney has quite a large Chinese population. Most of them live up either in Chatswood or somewhere around that area, but it's quite a large Chinese population. And Chinatown has a very good market. I'm not sure about... I've been to the Chinatown in Melbourne. Sydney's is bigger, and Brisbane actually has one too, quite a large one. You're right, it's only 1 or 2 streets. It's not very big. Yeah, and then so is Chinatown in London. It's a bit disappointing when you go there.
You've never been to London Chinatown. I heard that there is one. Yeah, but we never got time to go around. Maybe this year we go again. Yeah, see how it unfolds, I guess.
Get some yum cha.
Yeah, let's see. So what's been happening in your part of the world?
There's actually, I think, more happening in the rest of the world, and China is kind of sitting back taking notice. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning here, so I haven't really been online to find out what's gone on overnight yet. But we're expecting Iran to get invaded soon. We're expecting Greenland to get invaded soon. We're sitting back and watching and waiting. I think most of my friends, particularly my Chinese friends, are kind of shaking their head and go, "What is going on right now? What are we watching? What are we witnessing?" It's really more a case of curiosity than anything else here. Most people are just waiting to see what's going to happen next. I mean, Trump doesn't seem to know where to stop, when to stop, or maybe he doesn't have any idea that he wants to stop. He wants to take over the world. I don't know.
I think with Iran, obviously, Israel wants to be the only superpower in West Asia, or as they call it, Middle East. So Iran will have to go. And also, I think it's related to the religious stuff, which I don't really understand. 2026, people still believe in religion. It's all religious mumbo jumbo to me. Yeah. I've no idea why. I could understand the concept of religion 1400, 2000 years ago, but now we've got much more information and knowledge that we can all sort of agree peace is probably the right way to go. But yeah, Iran would be attacked, I guess. Not sure when, because Israel wants to be the sole superpower in that area.
I made a comment online yesterday or the day before that Iran has something that America needs desperately, especially now America has control of Venezuelan oil. So Venezuelan oil is very, very thick crude oil, and Iran has a very sweet, light oil. And the two can be mixed to be refined. And I think that's possibly the real reason behind all of this. If we assume that oil was the reason, then oil is the reason Iran has to come down as well. There's a lot of other aspects. There's rare earths in both Venezuela. I mean, rare earths are not rare, they're everywhere. But those countries have an abundance of them, so they're going to try and take over those things. They've had to, America, this is the United States of America, has had to set its sight on an urgent allocation of funds for rare earth development, rare earth elements, because China has basically cut them off. And having cut them off, it's just cut Japan off as well. Same sort of thing. It's basically said to Japan, you're not getting anything. Full stop. Anything you want for dual use, you're not getting it. You can't even register to get it anymore. So they've given Japan a list of several thousand items that or products that they're not going to get because they can be used for dual use. And Japan is militarizing. And Japan is a really serious threat to China. The United States is not. Japan really is, because it's been there and it's done that before. So that's something that China is really keen to prevent, the militarization or the continued militarization of any country. And it will support any country defending itself, but not militarily. That's another myth. That's something that perhaps we could just correct. There's a story at the moment that China, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has announced that it will militarily defend Iran if there is an invasion. It has done no such thing whatsoever. What it's done is said we will support Iran. We will give it all the assistance that it needs, but it stops short of military defense. China will not do that. But this rumor is starting because people are putting it, they're actually citing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and saying they've said they will defend Iran. Well, they didn't. They said they will support Iran, which is a very different thing. And because they're citing it, and a lot of people just choose not to go and take a look at the citation, or when they read the citation, it says, we will support Iran. It does say that, but it doesn't mention militarily. Now, why would they do that? And the idea is they are trying to sell to the rest of the developed world that China promised support, and then when we invade, they didn't provide that support. So we're coming for you next, and China aren't going to help you. Well, China has made this very clear. It doesn't help militarily with defense. It will help in any other diplomatic. It'll help logistically. It'll help with support. It'll help with aid. It'll help with reconstruction afterwards. It'll help with intelligence collection. It will help with everything it needs to help with, but it won't send Chinese soldiers to fight for another country. It sent peacekeepers, and it does that all the time. It's the largest component of peacekeepers that the United Nations has. So it'll do that, but it won't send soldiers.
Yeah, China has that non-interventionist policy. Also, China's first and foremost concern is protecting its own sovereignty, and then the second one is economic prosperity of its own country, its own people. So it doesn't really care what happens around the world as long as it doesn't impact on its sovereignty. But also, China doesn't really have military overreach. Like, I mean, in simple words, China doesn't really have the military muscle to do that.
No.
Not that it wants to do it, it doesn't really have it also. So it first, it doesn't want to do it. Second, it doesn't really have it. It's only America. So in terms of military superpower, there's only one, America, simple, or Israel if you combine both. Economic superpower, you've got two, I guess. And then maybe you can add Russia after US and China. So yeah, China is not going to help.
You can probably say that in the coming years you can add India. Not quite yet, but you will quite soon.
Yeah, I seriously doubt it. I mean, I can go back to the independence days. Both China and India got independence at the same time. India was way ahead when it came to industrialization, education, all that kind of stuff. Now, where is India? I mean, they've got really bad policies over there. Corruption, I mean, 800 million people live below poverty belt or something like that. So, I mean, yeah, and also, I mean, Pakistan's, not that Pakistan is good. Pakistan is also sort of dictatorship, but Pakistan proved that India is not a military power in that region. And Pakistan is tiny. Yeah, Pakistan is tiny. So, yeah, India, mainly because of its size and the large population, you can say economically its GDP is good, but if you look at GDP per capita, it's only $3,000, which is nothing compared to China, which is I think 15,000 or 12,000 something per capita. So,
not quite that. I'm not sure what the figures are now. I mean, we're expecting the GDP figures to come out any day now. I'm not sure what day they come out, but the GDP for 2025 will be out shortly, and I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. It will be 5%, I'm sure. A lot of the ratings people, the Moody's and the Standard & Poor's, upgraded their ratings during the year. China says we are aiming for 5%. Some of them started at 4.6, went up to 4.8, and there's now changes to that as well. So we're waiting to see what happens. You mentioned with the military with China, and the word that you used is, I think you said outreach or overreach. They don't have something that the Americans do have. They don't have the ability to go all the way around the world to do what America does. So this is the problem. They're not going to send troops to Venezuela because those troops would not come back. It's as simple as that. It's too far away to supply them logistically. China doesn't have that kind of military sense that it needs to have logistics. Its logistics are internal because it's built to defend China. It's built to protect its sovereignty, protect the people. That's one of the interesting things about the American military. It's illegal for the American military to operate on American soil without some kind of presidential or congressional orders. It's the opposite here. They only operate on Chinese soil, and they're trusted. They're very. I mean, they're loved. The PLA is much loved because to get into it, you need to be the best kid in your class. You need to be a solid student. You need to be fully fit. You can't get in there if you've got a criminal record. You can't even get into the military if you have a tattoo in China. If you have a tattoo, you're kicked out of the military or not allowed in. So, it's a place where people go for a job and they serve their 2, 3, 5, whatever years. And some of them stay in there for their career. But I've got family members, including my father-in-law, who was in the military for several years. And my wife's cousin is married to a guy who's an ex-soldier. And these guys, they serve their time. And then when they're finished, they have a choice. Do you want to pay off for your time? Or would you like us to help you find a job and you become part of the ongoing military machine? No soldier in China, no former soldier in China will ever be homeless, will ever want for medical care. So soldiers get special treatment. Ex-soldiers even get special treatment. They can go to the front of the queue to get on a train or a plane. They'll often get upgraded. They have their own special sitting areas in the train station. This is for military personnel only. So they always have a seat. So yeah, they're all really nice people as well. They're very polite in society, males and females. You'll see them, and you can usually tell them from their bearing, and they're always very, very polite. These are the people who jump up to give you your seat on the train or the metro. These are the people who help you carry your bags up the stairs. This is the sort of people that get into the military in China. Very, very different to the West. I spent a short period of time in the British Army, and I never really enjoyed my time there. Got out as fast as I could. But I know the sort of people that are in the army, or the regiment I joined anyway, were not very nice people. You didn't want to spend much time around them. Not if you had any education, any class. They were the dregs of society into the military because there's nothing else for them to do. They couldn't qualify to do anything except work in a factory or a shop floor. And so the army gives them an option. Sometimes it gives them an education and a chance. Other times they just do their years and then come out.
Yeah. I guess with China and Venezuela and China and Iran. So China imports around 16% of its oil from Iran. From Venezuela, it was only 4%. So Venezuela wasn't really that important anyway. Not that China could have done anything. I mean, again, and when it comes to military overreach, power and intelligence, America is the sole superpower. With Iran, and also Venezuelan oil is, like you mentioned, it's different. It's very difficult to extract and very difficult to process. So it's going to take a lot of time for, let's say, even if American companies go there and try to take the oil, it's not going to be cost effective for American companies to do that. Whereas Iranian oil is
Trump
better.
found that out.
Yeah.
Trump called the oil industry leaders into a big meeting and effectively found that out. They said all the niceties. Thank you, Mr. Trump, and all this sort of stuff. Thanks to your intervention, we believe there will be stability in the region. But right now, we're not prepared to invest. So without military support, they're not going in there to do this. And if they do go in, they're going to find there's a lot of Chinese companies already there. One of the things that's come up in my feeds is, why is China allowing America to seize its assets? And the simple answer to that is, are they? It's another question. Can you give me an example? Can anyone give me an example? As far as I'm aware, there's not a single Chinese asset at risk of seizure. And I think the America knows that it won't do that. It doesn't need to do that. It doesn't need to alienate China, because it must use China for its recovery, its own recovery. America's in a situation now. It's I describe it as Donald Trump is under siege. He has the January the 6th people. They're actually fighting him now, or his administration now, not supporting him because he didn't support them. Yes, he pardoned them, but he didn't support them. They went into prison, they served their time, and he didn't back them up, and it was not a nice experience for them. So now they're fighting for compensation, they're fighting for their rights, they're fighting for prisons to be upgraded or even closed down, some of them. So that's what the January 6th movement are doing now. Inflation is all over the place. They had 2 months without data, and now they're saying inflation, they're judging inflation by things that are not really inflationary. The price of eggs might have come down, which was it was something that he had this kind of benchmark, this tokenism. We get the price of eggs down, then I can talk about the price of eggs. But what's happened to the price of socks? The price of everything has gone up. He's got over 1,000 companies suing the administration now for repayment of the tariffs that they had to pay. So people have been saying this all along. It's not China paying the tariffs. It's not Australia or Canada or anyone else. It's the consumer in America paying the tariffs. And they're having to absorb it. The companies are having to absorb it, because if they don't absorb it, inflation is going to take off. And inflation already has taken off, but they've stopped recording it properly. So you've got inflation, you've got interest rates, which are pretty high. Then that's hurt China as well, because a lot of Chinese money has gone into American interest rates. So it's not good for China to have that because Chinese interest rates are so low. Now, if you've got a mortgage, that's great. But if you want to invest, that's shocking. I've got money in a term deposit at 0.2% interest in a term deposit. So, I had to put that in there because I needed it for an immigration application. So it's locked away for a 6-month period. When it comes out, I'm not going to invest in that kind of return. So why would I? I can invest in America and get 3%. Not that I invest in America right now. I'd stick to China and invest in something in China. But there's a lot of things going on that Trump has really not got the support of his own people. Of course, he's got the support of his diehard MAGAs, but he doesn't have the support of the American people, as far as I'm aware. It certainly doesn't look like it. With the ICE killings that are going on, there's protests all over the place. This is another BLM. This is what happened in the end of his last term. Black Lives Matter, when George Floyd was murdered in the same city. So, there's a lot going on. And I think it's causing him to have maybe a little sleepless night or two.
If you want to put a Western spin on those headlines, like they do on other countries, you could say, for American, the headline could be "Dictator sends army goons to curb public in America," something like that. And you can flip the headlines.
Point.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting point because when there have been protests here in China, and I think we could probably skip over Tiananmen Square, which was 40 years ago almost, and it was the last time the military was ever used. The military don't get used for this thing. Military used to defend things. So, for example, the Three Gorges Dam has a huge military presence. It has its own military barracks. It has its radar warning systems. No one's going to bomb that without the People's Liberation Army knowing about it. But they won't be called out if there's a protest. The same thing happened in Hong Kong when the riots and protests went berserk there in 2019. The Chinese military came out of their barracks to help clean up, and then they went back into their barracks and let the police sort out the problems. And that's the way it works. There's no paramilitary here. There is a People's Armed Police, PAP, and they are what you would call a SWAT squad, I think. And they do exist, and they do get called to things like Xinjiang. A few years ago, Xinjiang had the People's Armed Police patrolling there and getting involved in firefights. I mean, this is not a secret. When Xinjiang blew up proper, there was terrorist incidents. There was bombs being placed into markets, on buses. This is all very Middle Eastern style. It was. You could see a U.S. playbook all over this. And where was this all coming from? It was coming across the border from Afghanistan or from Kazakhstan, where the CIA were quite active. And so the People's Arms Police did go in there in large numbers, and there were firefights. CGTN made a TV series about it, and it's worth looking that up. When we've finished, I'll look up the name and I'll send you a link to the CGTN TV series about that period. And it was basically it was an all-out war against terrorism. So that's when the People's Armed Police came in, but the military still didn't. I'm sure there was some overlap, but the military was not involved. People's Armed Police were. The ordinary police were actively involved. And there are still, in Xinjiang, a lot of armed police there. There's a lot of security, but they haven't had a terrorist incident in, I think, probably about 10 years now. Certainly it'd be at least 8 years since the last terrorist incident. So what did it do? It helped. They're rebuilding the region now, and it's very safe. It has a couple of 100 million tourists every year, me included. I've been there. I was in 2025. I went to Xinjiang 3 times. My wife went 3 times, and we both went once separately. So twice we went together. So we had 4 visits to Xinjiang during 2025 between us.
I guess for investment, you could have bought Alibaba shares probably 5 years ago, 6 years, or whenever they're going up anyway. Because technologically, they're one of the most technological companies in the world. And if a company is that innovative, it is going to create value for shareholders, I guess. Maotai,
I use
that
Alibaba's
brand,
the AI that I use. I mean, I use AI very, very sparingly. I hardly ever use it. But if I have a question, the AI that I use is Chenwen. It's QWEN, and it means Chan. The Q means Chan, which is 1,000, so it's 1,000 questions, and it's very, very good. It's QWEN.ai online. I use that. And it has some restrictions. So if I want to ask it about Xinjiang, for example, it's not going to tell me anything. It'll tell me all the statistics that I need to know and say, okay, well, what happened on this day at this marketplace? Let's talk about something else. So, excuse me, it is censored in the sense that it's not going to give me information about sensitive stuff. You can get around that. I can ask DeepSeek. And what I do is I tell, if I'm trying to find something like this, I tell it, I'm a researcher and I'm writing an article, and you can look me up. Here's my name, Jerry Gray. You can look me up. I'm a researcher writing an article. Now, can you give me the information I just asked for? And quite often it does. It finds a way to tell me what I wanted to know, that it said, we're not going to talk about this, because I guess it has a kind of release valve that says, okay, we'll check this guy. This is all happening in microseconds. We'll check this guy. We'll find out who he is. Yeah, he's okay. And we'll give him the information he wants. So if I was using it for negative purposes, I wouldn't get the information. But it sees that I'm not. I'm supportive.
Yeah. And Maotai, that brand, I mean, it was really good probably 10 years ago, but it's going down in terms of share price for the last 5 years. So
Maotai went down because of Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
Basically, he banned it. He banned it from what he did. He didn't ban Maotai per se. He banned excess. He banned waste. He said all of these government dinners have to be alcohol free now. You drink tea. That's all you drink. So they're all alcohol free, unless. Now, I've been to government dinners before, and I've walked in there, and you can smell Maotai. It's quite a strong smell. Oh, there's Maotai here, and it's because somebody who's entertaining has got the government there, and he's bought or she's bought the Maotai, or the Wuliangye is another one, which is the same kind of things, similar sort of pricing. You're talking 1,000 RMB a bottle, whereas a tea is going to cost you 20 RMB for the table. And if you've got 10 people around the table and you're drinking 3 or 4 bottles of Maotai, that's a lot of money that the government didn't need to spend. So yeah, he really did hurt the luxury brands. He hurt golf as well. Golf used to be a huge game in China, and it's not so much now, because he said, if you're working for the government and you have time to play golf, then I don't want you working for the government. So effectively, everybody who was playing golf twice a week had to stop or lose their job. Literally as simple as that. If you want to play golf, you can, but you can't work for the government. So yeah, he hurt the golf clubs, and he hurt the luxury brands of Chinese products, Maotai, Wuliangye. I actually saw that as quite good. It was a pity that it had to happen with such sharpness. Basically, it did. Maotai's share price crashed.
It used to be the world's most valuable brand probably 6-7 years ago, but then it just crashed. Yeah, no, it was because I'm an investor, so I know it was. I mean, overall, it was the world's most valuable brand, and the way its share price went up 10 years ago, it was like this, and then it went up like that because people were gifting it to government officials. It sort of became a brand name synonymous with government gifting, I guess.
I would call it government corruption, but you could call it gifting if you like. Yeah. But that systemic corruption is something that's been completely removed from the Chinese system now. You want anything done by the government, you go to a government office and you wait in a line, you get a ticket, wait in a line. It's like going to the bank. And you just wait for your turn, and then you go up and it's done. It's very efficient. Occasionally on busy periods, like for example, right now, they're changing the system of electric bikes, and electric bike riders are going to need licenses. It's 20 RMB in the license lasts 10 years. the registration for an electric bike. You get a plate, it costs you 20 RMB, and it lasts 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you've probably scrapped your bike and got another one. But if you haven't, you can apply free for an extension for that. So it's not like they're trying to do this to raise money. They're trying to do this to improve standards. There are a lot of accidents with e-bikes. They're riding around. People are not qualified to ride them. They're not trained to ride them. You just get on. Anyone can just get on an e-bike, and 14, 15-year-old kids, and off they go. No helmet, all this stuff. Yeah, and it's actually these things are as fast as some smaller motorbikes. I've been on an e-bike that has the capacity to do 60 kilometers an hour. I wore a helmet, but I just bought a bike helmet for that one. But yeah, you don't. At the time, you didn't have to, and now they're limited to 25 kilometers an hour. Now they need a registration plate. The rider needs to have passed a test, but it's a very simple test just to prove they can handle it. It's not like you have to go and do massive amounts of study as you do for a driving license here. You have to go to a school to get a driving license. So what this has done is it's caused thousands of people to have to go into this system to get their registration, to get their license, to get the number plate, to get it all sorted out, to become legal within the time frame of the law being implemented. So that means that you go into a government office, it's pretty busy right now, because the government office that deals with driver vehicle licensing is really... But they've opened, in Beijing alone, they opened 20 new sites to do this. So, yes, they're not making money on it. It's not like in the West where they say, we're going to make money on your driving license. You get a license valid for 5 years. And I don't know, I think my last one cost me $40 or $50 to get a driving license. And it's just a little piece of plastic.
Yeah.
What am I paying for? I'm paying for the government office. What do I pay taxes for? Everything I needed from the government in Australia, I had to pay extra for. And
plus
the
registration every year. Yeah.
Yeah, what's a car registration now?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I never understood that. Yeah, I mean, once you've got a license and once it goes into the system that you're driving this car, I'm not sure why registration is necessary, but there are all these ways to raise money for the government, I guess.
Yeah.
But some of the electric bikes go as fast as 130 kilometers per hour, and there are many accidents over here as well. And 130 is frightening speed for an electric
motorbike speed. Yeah. I don't.
And
think
those people in London and Manchester and other parts of England where they steal those mobile phones, they use these kind of electric bikes. They whiz away at 130 kilometer per hour speed, snatch the phone. Yeah.
That used to be a problem here. It's not anymore, but it used to be a problem here. I don't know anyone. I lost a phone. It's probably 3 or 4 years ago now. I went to a public toilet in Guangzhou, put my phone on the little stand where did what I needed to do. I was actually getting changed, not going to the toilet because I was making a video, and they wanted me wearing a different shirt. So I'd just gone in, got changed, and once I picked everything up, I walked out, and I got about maybe half a kilometer down the road and realized, I've left my phone in the toilet. I went back and it's not there, so gone. We tried the local police, no good. So someone picked up my phone. So it got stolen, but it was theft by finding rather than theft. And I never saw it again. I had to get a new phone, which was really inconvenient because being in a different city and a foreigner, we're trying to reconnect again. Looks like we have internet connection problems, but we're still talking to each other. So
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Being a foreigner in China, when you register, you need to register with your passport. So I had to go back to the place where I'd registered the mobile phone shop, China Mobile Store, and do it in my own city. So I had to get back to Zhongshan and re-register, which was a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And coming back to Greenland, I think, like we were talking about last time, one good thing would be NATO could be dismantled. I mean, and their warmongering propaganda could be finished if America takes Greenland. So let's see what happens.
I saw Germany has sent ships to the region, and France is doing the similar thing.
And we are back. So I was talking about Greenland's invasion and how it's going to sort of dismantle NATO, which will be good. Yeah, because NATO's or a warmongering paths with everybody. Like I mentioned last time as well, they've got a propaganda video implying that China is the enemy and they need to come to Asia to spread democracy and freedom, which is really weird, I guess. West has always been at war with each other, and now they again want to come to Asia. Not sure why.
It is weird because, I mean, people are watching this and they're saying, oh, China is a threat. And they're not considering the reality. They're reading the headlines, they're watching these videos. They're not considering the reality. China hasn't invaded Venezuela. China hasn't invaded Iran. China hasn't invaded anybody. And it's not threatening to invade. And then we get this, oh, but what about the South China Sea? Okay, when did China seize or destroy a ship in the South China Sea? Now, you could argue all you like that they're being hostile or aggressive, but they haven't murdered anybody. They haven't shot anybody. They haven't pirated any fishing boats. They haven't taken any. What they're doing is they're trying to defend. Again, we're using this word defend rather than attack. They're trying to defend what is disputed water. They're not trying to stop anything happening there that should be happening. They're trying to stop what shouldn't be happening. So where the Philippines have landed a ship, an old ship, a very old ship, they've beached this defunct landing craft on a beach in a shoal which is in disputed area and is regarded as pristine ocean. So China said, you need to take this away. And Philippines are going to restock it all the time. But there's people on board it, military people living there. So hang on, who's the aggressor here? The military people who are on a ship on a disputed island, or the people who are off the island trying to stop them from building this, they've allowed food and they've allowed water through. They've allowed humanitarian aid through, but they will not allow building materials to go through. And that's where the water cannons come out. When 20 ships try to get in there, they'll say, no, you're not getting in there. You're not going to restock this crew of people that are on there with things that they can use to build an encampment. They're not doing that. So that's what China is trying to prevent. So that's defensive. They're trying to defend. And it's disputed water. So China is not saying, we want that. They're saying, you can't have that until this dispute's been resolved. That's what China is doing. So the same thing. They're not hostile. They're not aggressive. They haven't murdered anyone. They haven't pirated any goods. They are simply saying, you can't use this disputed water. You can't, or this disputed shoal. You're not using it. We're not going to allow that to happen. So that's what they're trying to prevent. So it's defense of something, not because they want to build it up. It's because they don't want it built up. And the Filipinos are doing exactly that. But they're doing this because the US said they could. And the US supports them. And every time we hear something about it, it's because the US has CNN or Fox News or somebody else on their boat. They've come to the Philippines. They've got on a Philippines Coast Guard boat and basically made it into a mobile studio for American consumers. Who are the aggressors here? There's nothing that China has ever done that says we are aggressive. They're very defensive. They're very assertive, but they haven't been aggressive.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Japan could be a threat to China, even though Japan is small. But again, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and Japan has a backing of America. I'm not sure Philippines is a threat to China. Philippines is very small and doesn't really have the militarily capability.
Yes. But it has 9 US bases on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. So all these countries have US bases, and like we were discussing last time, Japanese people themselves are protesting against building more American military bases. And the way Americans did it was really clever as well. They built it in Okinawa, which is also a contested island. And the reason they built it in Okinawa was because that's where Americans can go and rape and pillage and all those, do all those kind of things to the natives over there, not go to mainland Japan. But people are sort of waking up as well in Japan also, but not sure how long it's going to take. But It doesn't look
biggest
like that
problem I
America
see
is slowing down on building bases. Yeah, they are
no.
building more and more bases. Yeah, that's the thing.
With Japan, the biggest problem that I see is that Takaichi, the new Prime Minister of Japan, is actually growing in popularity. This is a scary
Correct.
thought because she's talking about getting nuclear power, not power, armaments into Japan. She's talking about remilitarizing. She's already upped the budget to remilitarize. She's talking about removing the defensive constitution. She already has power in a 2015 act that was passed 10 years, 11 years ago now, that act which allows her, if there is an existential threat to Japan, and there's the thing, who defines what is an existential threat? But it allows her to preemptively attack the country that is the threat to Japan. This is a new thing which has just really started. Now, Japanese people are probably looking at this. 15 or 18% of them are saying, we don't want that. But 80 to 85% are saying, this is exactly how Japan should be. Japan, one thing that we need to learn from the Second World War is how not to lose it, because they've had their century or half century of humiliation. They've been taken over by the Americans. They've been invaded. They've been occupied. They've been economically castrated by the Americans as they were the number one, or soaring towards being the number one economy. The Americans castrated them, and now they're not even, I don't think they're even in the top 10. They're certainly not in G7 level anymore. Their economy has shrunk. They used to have an economy. One country, Japan, had an economy larger than the rest of Asia. That's pretty amazing. Now, Guangdong has an economy almost as big as Japan's. Just one province. No, actually, probably take 2 or 3 provinces to be as big as Japan in China. So that's the difference. It's really turned completely around, and the Japanese are going through their own century of humiliation, and the Americans put them there. The Chinese didn't. I would suggest that Japan is the most dangerous threat to stability in this region, not the Americans, the Japanese, if they were to remilitarize. And I'd also suggest that the most likely first target for them would be Australia, not China. They know what will happen to them if they try China. It's happened before. They did lose a lot of people. They murdered, raped, pillaged China. 30 million people in China were killed, and about 25 million of them were not military. They were civilians. In one,
it was one of the biggest genocides.
The rape of Nanjing was a horrific part of it, but when you look at it in terms of its absolute numbers, as horrific as it was tiny. 300,000 people died in a 6-week period, but 35 million died in it's more than 7 years, between 1931 and 1945, but 1937 to 1945 proper. China and Japan were at war rather than just being occupied. So the incident, and again, this was a false flag that created a Japanese incident that they could start this war. And instead of just being an occupying force, they then went to war with China. So they were occupying parts of the northeast, Dongbei, they call it Manchukuo. They called it Manchukuo. What we call Manchuria in English, or Dongbei in Chinese. They occupied that area, and then they spread to the rest of China. They firebombed the city that I live in because it was a place where, in fairness to the Brits, because the Brits were fighting fascism too, but the Brits were bringing weapons in for the Chinese military through the port here in Zhongshan from Hong Kong. So the whole city got firebombed. I don't know how many people died, but the whole city, the entire city was firebombed. And a lot of people lived in modern straw huts in those days too. There are still some relics of the old city left, and you can find them quite easily if you know where to look. But there are buildings here that the Japanese occupied because it had a Japanese force in this city. There's one area in town near the university here, not far from my home, where people won't buy a home. It's a housing estate, but it's all being used for offices. Nobody wants to live there because it's where they used to use for their firing range. They used to shoot people. They would take prisoners there, interrogate them, torture them, shoot them. That's how it worked here for several years in China. So no, they don't want the Japanese know that they will be met with a wall of steel if they attack China. But if they attack Australia, it's not going to hurt anybody. There's only 28 million people down there. You know, they'll produce an army big enough to take over the resources that they need. Once they have the resources, then they can militarize properly, and then they become a real danger for Asia. Again, remembering that they occupied, 30 countries or so. I don't know how many countries they did, but Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, the colony at the time, they occupied all of these places. They occupied China. They didn't occupy Thailand, but they were building a train line into it from Burma to Thailand. So they just basically took over Asia because they felt that it was their right. So now they're going through their own century of humiliation, and they want out of it, the way that China did 100 years ago, 70 years ago.
Yeah, but this time Japan is economically not that strong. So where's the money going to come from? Unless they divert all the resources towards military. And then, if people are wise enough over there, people are going to come to the streets and protest that no,
there's already protests going on, but when 100,000 people come out, another million people don't. That's the problem.
That's true.
You might get 10% of the people are against this, but you've got 90%, more than 80% of the people supporting Takaichi and saying, yes, this is what Japan needs. This is how we need to go ahead. We need to be the force in Asia. We need to counterbalance the US. We need to be better than the Chinese. That's the way they view it. A lot of people, it's quite frightening to me. As I don't think Japan would attack China in my lifetime. It would need a lot of ifs for it to ever happen. But Japan attacking China again is a very, very real fear.
I think it will be Japan with America behind it, or like we were talking about last time, Israel is sending weapons to Taiwan as well. So maybe Taiwan, along with Japan, attacking China or something like that. Yeah.
I don't think there will be an attack on the mainland of China. I can't see that happening. America are not that stupid. They would be at the end of their logistics line. It's the opposite side of the world to them. They don't have, even with their 700 or 800 military bases, they do not have the logistics supply chain to conduct a war in China. Certainly nowhere near it now. They're probably 10, 15 or 20 years at least away from having the capability. And by then, of course, China is already a peer competitor in the military stakes. And they also know that China is designed, it's built, the whole military force of China is built to defend. It's not built to attack. They're not going to take the war across to America. They're going to defend. And a lot of American bodies would be going home. That's the problem. A lot of them would be left at the bottom of the ocean as well, because I don't think there'd ever be a land attack. And if there was a land attack, it would be repelled quite successfully, I'm fairly sure.
That's why you can see the change in Americans' foreign policy in the new, I think, National Security Strategy document. They are, at this point, they're recognizing China as an economic threat or economic rival, not as a military threat. So they're focusing on Latin America because they want to control resources over there, I guess.
Yeah, they have they said that they were going to focus on their own hemisphere, and yes, they're doing that. But then, of course, Iran is not in their hemisphere, but they're going to do that because it serves Israel's purposes. And so they've said that they want to focus on their own hemisphere. And they've also said that they would like to contain China. Now, there's a lot of people read this, and I think some people misread this and said, oh, this is good because it means that the China-America rivalry is over and done. It's not. What Kobe wrote is effectively, we're still going to contain China just as much, but our allies need to pick up the burden. So Japan will pick up the burden. It's already increased its military spending. Australia has got AUKUS, which another report out just today says that AUKUS is going to be a failure. This is from a retired guy who's been involved in it until he left, and now he's retired. He can open his mouth and say this, and he says it's going to be a failure. We're not going to get the subs. We're not going to get the control of the subs. and it's not going to come in at the $368 billion. It's going to be much, much higher. And then we're not going to get what we want. We're going to pay more and we're not getting it. So when you start seeing reports like that in mainstream media, which is supportive of AUKUS, you start to think, well, something must be seriously wrong when mainstream media are now turning the story around to say, this guy who knows something is telling us this. So, yeah, there's a lot going on there. So South Korea has upped its spending. Japan has upped its spending. The Philippines obviously has upped its spending. And so Australia must up its spending as well in order to continue getting support from America. At some stage, Australian government has to say, we can't afford to do this anymore.
Yeah, the problem with Australian media is that more than 140 channels, news outlets, news magazines are owned by Murdoch family's corporation. And when you have that much concentration of media, obviously the propaganda is going to spread. So that's the problem with Australian media. I mean, there were a few good journalists. John Pilger, I think sadly he died. He was really good. Yeah. There are a couple of others right now, but yeah, no one in the mainstream media. Everybody sings the same tune in Australian media. Nobody asks questions. You sort of watching the news, and you're thinking, okay, why aren't they asking questions? Basic questions that they could ask to get answers. No, they all have a script, I guess, So,
well, if
so
they
that
ask
tells
the
me
embarrassing
that,
questions, they won't be invited to the next press release. But effectively, they're not doing their job.
And also,
there are a couple you can find on John Menadew's Pearls and Irritations. You can find some good things on there. Michael West Biz is pretty good. Marcus Rubenstein is doing some good stuff there. I'm just talking about inside of Australia. There's a few independent journalists who are doing some fairly good things. But the bottom line, with the exception, I think, of Marcus Rubenstein, all of them fear China as a threat. Marcus has been to China. He understands China much better than perhaps the rest. But they still, they may talk about the American AUKUS and how bad that deal is, but they still talk about China as the threat, which I would disagree. And they don't interview people like me. Very few people, even the independents. Marcus and I have spoken a couple of times, but we've never actually done an interview along these lines because he's not that political. But he does understand China quite well. He's been here, traveled here, written books about the place. Michael West is very good in terms of identifying the problems inside of Australia, but understands that China is the threat. So when you start to see this, they will start their conversation with, despite human rights abuses and a dictatorial policy in China, Australia needs to, whatever it is. But there's no dictatorial policy or human rights abuses going on. This is the misinformation. So, yet it's quite strict in its government control of things, but it's not dictatorial. I'm freer here than I've ever been in Australia. And I was part of the authoritarian state in the UK, so I know what an authoritarian state looks like. I was in it. I was a police officer in Margaret Thatcher's Blue Army. So, I know what authoritarianism looks like, and I don't live in it inside of China. So those criticisms are quite wrong.
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher was... she categorized ANC and Nelson Mandela as a terrorist. So you don't really have much hope for Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, so, I mean, so basically resisting... apartheid is a terrorist activity, I guess. So, I mean, they did the same in India as well. When we were fighting for our freedom, so we were categorized as, so the term terrorist wasn't invented, anarchists, rebels, thugs. So we've gone through millions and millions of deaths fighting for our freedom. So we know that mentality. But it's very rare that
British
you
mentality.
have because anybody who's against us is a terrorist or something like that.
That's right.
But in mainstream media in Australia, you don't really have diversity of voices.
No.
That's the problem. And I don't know who watches news over here. Most people are on YouTube. So one thing that I have noticed is that there's a lot more pro-Australian government news on YouTube now in my feed than ever before. and seems like a concerted effort, because in America, they did some investigation, and again, it goes back to American foreign policy and Israel's foreign policy, that they were paying influencers, and there is a concerted effort to spread misinformation about, you can say, Muslims, Islam, or immigrants, something like that. So I started seeing that 3 or 4 weeks ago. There are a lot of feeds in YouTube now. I never used to get them before. Yeah.
The funny
not
thing
sure whether
is,
it's true or not. Yeah.
It's definitely true. I mean, the Biden administration for certain paid influencers. No doubt the Trump administration has continued. And when you see that this is a good idea, it pays any government to do it. And of course, what you'll see is reports that say China is paying influencers for stories. Now, here's the interesting thing about me. I write for organizations like Global Times sometimes, People's Daily. I've written for CGTN. I've appeared as a guest on some of these channels. You don't get paid for this work. They ask you to write a story and you get the recognition for it. Now, I can get paid if I write an article for a media outlet. There's no question about that. That's just freelance reporting. It's not illegal. It's not anything wrong with it. But the government points at me and says, I'm a foreign influencer. I'm an unregistered agent of foreign influence, and therefore I'm breaking the law. But anybody who gets paid to write about Australia is doing exactly the same thing and not breaking any laws. So where's my freedom of speech? They've crafted a law to make what I do, if I get paid, illegal. If I don't get paid, it's not an issue. But if I'm an agent of foreign influence, if Global Times said to me, hey, Jerry, we want you to write a series of articles and we want you to write about criticism of Australia, I would say, I'm not going to do that. I'll write a series of articles that criticize Australia's policy, and I would do that kind of thing. And then if I get paid for it, then I become an agent of foreign influence. So all I would do is have to really work hard to keep money out of it. That's one thing, which is a bit unfair, because if I write about Australia, I can be paid for that freely. But if I write about China, I can't. Now, the next thing is, if I write for the Global Times, every single fact is checked. They will come back to me and say, hey, Jerry, have you got a source for this? And I'd have to provide my source. And if I don't have a source, if it's just opinion, it's either deleted or it's rewritten as in my opinion. So I can't state it as a fact. I have to state it as an opinion because I haven't got a source for it. So it's a different thing. They're very, very careful about accuracy. So I can't tell a lie about China, yet they're accusing me. When anyone says you're a registered or unregistered agent of foreign influence, they're accusing me of being a liar on behalf of the Chinese government, when in fact, I'm not doing any work on behalf of the Chinese government, but I am writing for China in a positive light to show the real truth. I'm trying to counter the misinformation, and that gets me labeled as a misinformer. This is really interesting. This is how the Orwellian system works, the Orwellian system of doublespeak and war is peace. Misinformation is true. This is what they're saying. If I counter misinformation, I'm labeled a misinformer by my own government, not by China. I mean, I can write anything I want about China. I can write the negative stuff, and there is some. I could write it. They wouldn't care because it's true. As long as it's true, they won't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, not sure what's going to happen, but you see a lot of people not paying attention to mainstream news now, which is why I think maybe they're saying that there needs to be more concerted effort to propagandize the news, I guess. But most people get their news from YouTube. Yeah.
I reckon there's a Pulitzer Prize in it for whoever tells the truth. There should be. And if it's not a Pulitzer Prize, it should be a global prize that is recognized for truth in media. Yeah. Not a prize that's recognized that half the time the Pulitzer Prize, several times it's been proven after the prize had been issued that the premise was wrong. It was misinformation. Yeah. It's been proven several times.
Yeah.
Why can't we have something that is for truth in media rather than sensationalism in media?
Yeah, that's true. I guess they need to sell weapons and they need to make money.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, war
the
is
people
more
who control
profitable.
the narrative need the narrative, and the people who control the narrative are all multimillionaires. They're all extremely powerful people. They're not just rich; they are powerful. Then you've got the Musks, the Bezos, the Murdoch family. Wherever you go in the world, you've got the English-speaking Western world, if you want to call it that. I mean, Australia is definitely not in the West, but the Western world. If we want to call it that, then everything that we're told is, it needs to be checked, fact-checked. Not everything is false, but everything is based on misinformation. Everything we're told. And I think there was a CIA chief once said, once we get to that stage where the American public believe everything, then we'll know that we've won. And that's where it is right now. Still, fortunately, there's a lot of Americans coming into my feed. I get a lot of Americans, a lot of Australians saying, thank God I'm finding someone who's telling the truth about China. I get that all the time. It's amazing to see, and I'm really pleased that there are people out there who realize what I'm doing is correct. May not like it.
Yeah.
That's another thing we don't like. I just released a video this morning called "The China Shock is Not a Shock." People, we talked about this China shock there. People say, how did China do DeepSeek? How did China get a space station up there? The reason you're shocked by this is because you're not paying attention. They're announcing these things daily. Every single day there's a new announcement. They've cured cancer. They've got treatments for diabetes, treatments for Alzheimer's. They've got all of these things going on. They've just built a thorium reactor. They've created blood plasma from rice plants. All of these things are out there and being written about and being studied, and no one's paying attention. And then they suddenly say, how did China manage to do that? I'm shocked. Well, you're shocked because you're not paying attention. It's very simple.
I think the problem over here is that first, the government doesn't really spend on R&D and innovation. OECD's average R&D spend, and I'm equating R&D spend to innovation, is around 2.2% or something like that. Australia's is 1.7%. It's below OECD average. Obviously,
Do you know what
the government
China's
is not.
I would expect
China's
much
is
higher.
China's is 2.1. China's is still lower. I mean, that's the official figure that I've got. Maybe the figure is different in China, but the other thing could be that China is spending that 2.1% more efficiently as well. So there's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
2.1% of the GDP of China is an awful lot of money. That's one thing.
Correct.
The other thing is that may be the government spend. Does it also calculate, like Huawei? I don't know how many thousands of people Huawei have in their R&D department, but it's a lot. And the same thing with the bigger companies, the bigger brand names. Like Xiaomi must have. Xiaomi started its life making very cheap mobile phones. Now it's bringing out luxury sports cars. They're fantastic. And this is a company that has gone from when I first heard of Xiaomi, people would go to Xiaomi. It was that kind of a brand. Now it's a Xiaomi. It's as good as they get. I mean, I've got two phones here. One is a Vivo, one is an Oppo. They're not much different. One's got a better camera than the other, and this one was a gift. That's why I don't know if you can see the dust on it. It just sits on my desk. It doesn't get used, except if I'm going somewhere to take pictures, I'll throw that in my bag because it's got a very good camera. It's convenient to take a phone somewhere, more convenient than a camera. But they're fantastic, these things. And why are they so fantastic? Because they have hundreds or thousands of people in their company. How did DJI get so good? How did Insta360 get so good? How do all of these things get so good? Research, development, and innovation. And so I think it may be a lot higher than 2%. Certainly, it's a lot. It's a lot.
I think with the DJI, I heard a news probably 2-3 weeks ago that America is banning DJI into
It's
America.
got it's gone full
So
circle. There's no news, but there
mm,
has been a release. DJI is no longer banned.
that's good because
Yeah.
obviously
Well, I
you
think
can
they
look at it
found that
both ways.
DJI, even American drone makers couldn't make a drone without DJI. This was the problem.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
they went to the government, I guess, and said, you've banned our sources, and well, make it in America. We can't. It's impossible. We do not have the facilities. Build the facilities. Okay, who's going to pay for that? We can get these motors for our drones for pennies. Literally, a motor for a drone now, because DJI churning out so many cost pennies. So they can build a drone, but they can't build the motors for it because they're too small, too technical, but they can buy them for pennies. So who's going to pay to build a multi-million-dollar factory to make this thing that you can buy for just a couple of dollars? You're putting a motor into a DJI drone. I mean, I've got 3 drones. They're all DJI. I've got about 5 cameras, and they're all except one DJI. The only reason my 360 camera is not a DJI is because I bought it before DJI released the 360. Otherwise, it would be a DJI. They're that good. Everything they produce is that good. And I recently just upgraded my drone. So that's why I have 3 drones now, because I just upgraded to a little mini thing. It's this big. It's the Neo 2, and it's controlled by hand gestures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. On a bike, this is fantastic. I can actually control this thing. I just set it off on my bike, and off I go. It's filming me just like that. Easy.
Yeah.
No setup.
I think the problem with Australia is that Australia is not efficient in spending its resources. I can just give you one example. Australia is a net exporter of energy. Australia doesn't really import energy. It basically exports coal. Even then, Australian energy prices is some of the world's highest, on par with Japan. It's like 56 or 46 cents per kilowatt hour, which doesn't make sense if you've got all the resources. Comparing it to Norway also exports energy, doesn't really import energy. It's around 16 or 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Australia is more than double. And then you go into the detail, you see that there was a 2025 report by Transparency International Australia, which said that 727 lobbyists work in the National Capital, Canberra, which is more than 3 times, the number of elected officials. And almost every federal resource minister since 2001 has gone on to work in the fossil fuel industry after leaving parliament. So there is corruption here, and they never get caught because everybody is doing the same thing. And nobody really cares about Australia
You
as
have
a country.
systemic corruption. You can't change it unless you get a new leader, which is what China had. Until Xi Jinping came in, it was systemic corruption. And you got a new leader who knew this and said, we're not going to have this anymore. And it's taken him, we're 12, 14 years later, and we now have a complete government system that is, I'm not saying it's not corrupt. There's not corruption in there. There's obviously people who are corrupt, but there is no systemic corruption. You don't have that situation. Your lobbyists, your 700 lobbyists for 300 parliamentarians have pretty much made your government. Now, what did Norway do that was different? Norway has probably got a smaller population. It's a smaller country, certainly than Australia, for sure, in terms of geographical size. I don't know the population of Norway, but it's exporting gas and oil the same way that Australia is exporting gas and coal. So Norway has taken the fees from this and put them into a sovereign fund. So that sovereign fund now pays for all of Norway's social services, social security. So Norway has a much lower tax system. In Australia, American corporations and American lobbyists have come into the government and said it's good for the country to export all of this. And you've got to the point now where, until very recently, you had this laughable situation where you were a net exporter, but you had to import your own gas. So you had to import your own gas. And Western Australia was the only state that didn't do this. You had to import gas, and they were talking about building 2 new terminals so that gas could be imported when you're the largest gas exporter in the world.
Correct.
Something is very wrong with that. China's buying your gas, and we're getting it cheaper than you're getting it in Australia.
Exactly. Exactly.
My gas bottle cost me 100 RMB or 113 RMB, I think it is. It lasts me 5 or 6 weeks, and all my hot water, all of my cooking is done on gas. And I get a bottle delivered by a guy who, strong guy, puts it on his shoulder, walks into the house, connects it up, and walks out again. And I pay 113 or 115 RMB every 5 or 6 weeks when it runs low. In the winter, we'll probably have less showers. It'll last 6 weeks. In the summer, we have more showers, and it'll last 5 weeks. That's how our bill goes. It's 100 RMB for 5 weeks, 20 RMB a week for RMB. That's $4, maybe $5 tops of it for all the gas, water, and the gas. I don't have gas heating. My heating is done by air conditioning here. We don't have any central heating, so that's my heater there, cooler and heater. Right. But it's not on today. It's about 8 degrees today. It's not. I haven't needed a heater yet this year.
I think that's good. So this is why Australia is way behind when it comes to innovation and R&D, and in the startup culture as well. Yeah,
Australia's got a country. It's a small country. You wouldn't expect it to have much in the way of innovation, but it's an incredibly innovative history. Wi-Fi was created in Australia. Penicillin came from Adelaide, I think, but by a Scotsman. You've got all these things in your history that are fantastic. And you look at Australia now and you say, what's it doing? Basically, it's just an aircraft carrier for the United States. And Correct. It's exporting all of its resources without adding any value to anything. Let's just tear down another mountain, put it on ships and send it to China or Japan or Korea. That's all they're doing. So Japan, China and Korea are building stuff with your mountains and sending them back to you at a fee. So you do have trade surplus with China, which is a good thing. The reason you have a trade surplus, it's telling me that we're disconnected again, but we're not. Let's just keep going. The trade surplus is such that you've got this fantastic amount of soil, dirt, earth going out, and then you've got products coming back. So you have a higher value coming back than going out. But because you have a small population, more money is coming in from the exports than going out from the imports because it's a small population. All you need to do is add value to some of the stuff that you're selling. And it shouldn't be hard. And it might be expensive, but it will return its value many times.